Hello, NEI Hoops Nation, and welcome to week 2 of the Road to Muni podcast. We got a healthy chunk of people who started their journey to the Road to Muni, or at least with the hopes to get to Municipal Auditorium here in Kansas City. For those that don't know, that is where the round of 16, the final 16 teams in the NEI meet, and that is hence the name for the podcast for the Road to Muni. So, like I said, healthy chunk of people got started this week. For me, it was a fun week. I think I caught the better half of about 27, 28 games. So I'm a nut job. I'm crazy. I know that. I have about 3 games going on at a time. But for me, this time of year, I don't know about you, Coach, but it's so fun the first couple of weeks because not only are you getting to know, new coaches and new styles of play and even teams, that are kind of hyped up this time of year and kind of getting a chance to catch them. But you're also getting to see some new faces around and getting to know some of these new faces that are coming around at NEI. It's always fun getting to know these new faces, new kids, and even new coaches that make up the NEI field.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking a minute here before we came on and started recording. I'm sitting in the middle of a blizzard here in Colorado, and that to me always means it's basketball season. So coming from the Midwest, I remember those days when the weather starts turning and the sleet's in the air, it's about ready to start playing some hoops and get inside. So yeah, it was really fun. I'm not quite at your level in terms of how many games I caught, I can tell you that, but I certainly picked up on some, and some of the ones we mentioned on last week's show. Had a chance to watch some of those games as well. So it was a fun couple days, and looking ahead to this week, there's some really fun matchups as well. So it's a great time of year.
Yeah, and we're still going to get someone out there that is listening to this. Make sure you send Coach Lubbers some password information for a Synergy account so he can catch up. I know he enjoys the Synergy stuff, and it's always a good time. Plus, he also had a good idea before off camera as well that, if you guys want to, feel free to send us some gear. We'll definitely be bringing some gear across NEI. Anything we can do to support our brotherhood around. It's always fun. So if you want to do that, reach out to us. Just throwing that out there on the podcast. But as we enter Halloween week coming up, I don't know about you, Coach. I'm going to stay myself this year. Are you dressing up at all?
Yeah, I throw the Peyton Manning jersey on every year and walk around with that on. But boy, the snow might put a little damper on my Halloween plans. I was pretty excited to get out with the kids and start banging on doors, and they know they have to pay the candy tax at the end of the night back to Dad. So
there you go.
No, we'll still get out there and have some fun with it, but I dress up as other Broncos players, but currently that doesn't do us much good. So I'll stick with the Manning jersey this year.
Yeah, there you go. I can't go wrong with that one. But just recapping the previous week here. Heck of an opening week. Between upsets already, which is natural when you have a preseason top 25. You just kind of don't know, always, what a team is and isn't. And but yeah, I had several upsets this week. A couple milestones hit. Obviously, 500 wins for Coach Tonagel. I had a couple coaches with 100 wins. We had some different records across the NEI, which is always fun. And then we talked about it last week on that podcast that you're a big exhibition fan and watching those exhibitions. And not only did we have NEI already knock off a D1, UT Southern going and knocking off Tennessee Tech, but another one you pointed out last week, Georgetown went and over to Kentucky, the 16th ranked team in the country in NCAA Division I, and as a 1-point game at halftime. So it was definitely an interesting week already for week 1.
Absolutely. Yeah, I thought our NAI representation in those games was really strong. St. Thomas had a good showing in their exhibition. Like you said, Georgetown, that was a fun game. I watched. There's about a 25-minute package of that on YouTube that I watched from a highlights perspective. That was pretty cool to see. And then we found our way to knock off another D1. I saw some D2 exhibitions as well, and I know some coaches, like we talked about last week, have had some closed door scrimmages, and I've been talking to a few of them, and it sounds like those went pretty well also.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see our teams out there competing against that level competition. Also, for the fans out there to recognize that the margin is not that big uh, between the players at our level and some of those other ones. So
Yeah, and even in that Tennessee Tech game, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that there's NAI teams that some of these NAI teams can go out and win a league or whatever. That's not the case. It's just the gap. Talking about like what you said,
yeah,
the gap between them are fun to watch because I think that people sometimes think the NEI they have a certain perspective of the NEI, and it's just not true. So it's always glad to see
yeah,
those teams. And in the UT Southern case, I mean I don't know that they trailed the entire game, or if they did, it was only for less than a minute. So that's just something that it wasn't like a fluke where they came storming back from down 20 and hit a game winner or anything like that. I mean this is a UT Southern team who now has won 2 years in a row and beaten the Division One program. Last year they beat Samford, I believe 82-80 or 84-82, and Samford went on to have a 20-win season and win the SoCon, or share a title in the SoCon last year. So, it's not just our best teams beating off or knocking off, lower level teams. It's just fun to watch these teams
yeah,
compete for one, but two, it's also, I hope people are starting to see, like you said, that gap is closing, and it's not as big as most people, or not even most people. I think we're starting to get down to. I think hopefully when we first started this, we've narrowed that gap a little bit with some of our attention we've brought. But I do think that there is a big chunk of people still out there that believe that the Division One is that Division One bus mentality, but Division One is so far head and shoulders above the
yeah,
NEI, and that's just not always the case.
yeah, and that like we talked about with a couple of the coaches that we've had on, that the team that cuts down the nets at Municipal Auditorium, I promise you, has Division One players on its roster.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's and when we're out recruiting, we're recruiting guys that are getting Division One offers, Division Two offers, that type of stuff, and so there is certainly a number of players that fit at that level that are also playing on the best teams in the country at our level. So yeah, fun to see all around, and even just for those kids to go through and experience that environment, tipping it off at Kentucky and in that arena and all the history. It doesn't matter how many people are there, who's playing on the other side. It's just the opportunity to compete in those kind of environments is a dream come true for a lot of kids. So pretty
Yeah,
cool
no
to
doubt.
watch.
Yeah, no doubt. And you were talking about recruiting Division One players. Miles Burns out of Loyola. Kind of fun to see him. He was the 11th overall pick in the G League this year, and or G League draft over the weekend. And Miles spent 4 years, won a national title at Loyola, and then used his COVID year to go to Ole Miss, where he started 30 games in the SEC. So, if you want to talk about just a transition point there from into a player that actually played 4 years of NEI basketball and then started
Yep.
30 games in the SEC. That just tells you right there the type of competition we have. I know we're going to talk about another player later on here with Kyle Mangus signed a contract with the Pacers, Exhibit 10 contract. So we're going to have two guys in the G League, and I know that there are a couple guys out there that are playing overseas right now in big time European leagues that could play in the G League, but it's more money to go play in those bigger leagues in the Euro League. So, yeah, just kind of fun watching some of these players here the last couple of years and signing these big time deals.
Yeah, for sure. And Kyle's a really good representation of the NAI and what it's all about. And there's probably a lot of guys we don't even know about too, right? From schools and whatnot. So, and a few of our best players from last year are playing Division One this year, and that'll be fun to watch those kids go out there and compete. And yeah, there's lots of opportunities. It seems like there's a lot more opportunity than there used to be for kids coming from our level. And I think you look at a team like even the Miami Heat in the NBA, right? They're built with a bunch of people that weren't high level draft picks, guys that played Division Three, things like that, and they're out there competing for NBA championships. So there's really good players at all levels. I watched the Boston Celtics play, and Derek White's a kid that was in the Division Two conference out here in Colorado for 4 years, and kind of was a little under recruited, a lot under recruited, I would say, out of high school, and found his way down to UCCS and did a great job. So it's all levels of basketball has great players, and that's part of what makes keeping our eyes on this and gets you excited about watching 27 games a week, Junior. So
won't happen every week.
okay.
I got blessed that the wife was gone on opening weekend, so I got to steal some games and steal some time. I'm sure she'll be real thrilled when I try to do that when she's home, but we'll make it work. We'll see what we can do. But we talked about all the craziness, and I think it's important to keep in perspective with all that did happen this week. It's not a time to overreact. They're not the end all be all. Some of these teams that lost this opening weekend, they'll be completely different teams in 2 months, 3 months. Some of these teams that won this weekend, same way they sometimes you get so juiced up to play a game, and even if a ranked opponent come in, we had Kansas Wesleyan and William Penn get knocked off this weekend, 2 top 25 teams, and you're so early in the season that it's important, no matter if you win or lose, you don't let the highs get too high, the lows get too low, and those teams that are really good seem to find a way to bounce back. Kansas Wesleyan did after their loss on Friday. Indiana Wesleyan did on their, after they lost to Indiana Tech on Friday. They bounced back and won Saturday. Kansas Wesleyan won on Saturday. I think that's what you see. You just don't overreact to these games on the opening weekend. There's a long season ahead coming up.
Absolutely. And you don't know the full story either, right? What's going on behind the scenes. There's injuries, there's new faces, there's new coaches. There's a lot more that goes into it than just taking a list of 25 numbers and putting them next to names and saying you're good because we put a number next to your name. It really is all about the process of getting good by March, right? And playing your best basketball at the end of the season. So these games are just part of the process. They certainly set a tone, right? For some season, we have some games we're going to highlight this week that are opportunities for teams to set a tone for their season, but there's no nets cut down on the first weekend in October. That's certainly true.
Yeah, and really, maybe it comes down to if you're fortunate enough to be in that conversation for an at-large bid, down the road, maybe these games come back then. But really, ultimately, it's just a building block and a part of the season. So, like I said, it's fun. It's why I try to watch as many games as possible, because I do enjoy the process. Being a former college coach, that I like watching teams from the beginning and then seeing how they mature over the season. I think that's part of the funness of the season. Is just I don't know if funness is the word. Funness of the
you just
season.
Made it one, Junior. We're fine.
Hey, I'm okay funness with that. So.
It's in the dictionary. Look it up for all you viewers out there.
Yep. It's just cool to see those teams develop over the course of the season, and just kind of where they started and where they finished and things like that. Last year we saw a College of Idaho team lose their first game of the season and then win every single game the rest of the year on their way to the national title. So, maybe that happens with Indiana Wesleyan, who lost Indiana Tech this year. Who knows? But hard to really get. They're important games, but they're not end all be all by any means.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever got in coaching came from Coach Ralph Hodge, who was used to be at Olivet Nazarene for a long, long time, highly successful coach. And I remember it was my very first year of coaching, and I'm all excited and getting into conference play in the CCAC. And I asked Coach Hodge, I said, "Hey, do you have any advice for a young coach?" And it was early in the season. He said, "The best piece of advice I could give you is you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. Just stay with the process, keep working on the things that matter, keep pouring into your players and your system, and see where you end up at the end of the year." But that's stuck with me for over 20 years from him. It's one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. And it's a really good, humble position for everyone to maintain out there as you start moving into the season, which is you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. The margin's not that much. Typically most games you look up on any given night are at most 5-6 possessions one way or the other, and that's not that much. So that humble perspective as you get into the season, win or lose, I think is really important for coaches, players, programs to maintain as they start moving into the season.
As we speak of humbleness, one of the biggest milestones hit this weekend is a guy that I know is a friend of yours, and Greg Tonagel over at Indiana Wesleyan got his 500th win, which is pretty big milestone in most coaches' careers, but also the fact that he, at 42 years old, is now the youngest at any level. Actually passed Bob Knight for the youngest at the youngest coach to ever reach 500 wins, and then also at doing that at 500 and 129 is his record. So 629 games. He now passes Mike Lightfoot from Bethel. He is the fastest coach in the NEI to ever reach 500 wins as well. So first and foremost, congrats to Coach. Pretty big time to one of the best to do it here at this level and really at any level.
Yeah. Greg is a great human being and a really good coach, and I know he would be the first to deflect any credit on that, and I'll be the first to shout out assistant coach Jeff Clark as well, who's been Greg's right-hand man pretty much from the beginning, other than year one. I think Jeff's been there with him the whole way. And then also just point out the number of young men that have gone through that program, right? I mean, Greg's been doing it for almost 20 years at the same school. The consistency, the stability, the level of excellence that's been maintained there from the beginning all the way through now is really remarkable to watch. And it's a credit to Greg, certainly in his leadership, but it's also a credit to everybody else that has their fingerprints on that program and that university. And like I said, people like Jeff, the great players that they've had, the university's commitment to athletics. It's not a one-man band, and I know Greg would be the first to point that out, but he also deserves the credit that I know he won't give himself for all the work he's put into leading that program to where it is today.
So, for us, we got a chance to actually catch up with Coach earlier this week before his 500th win, but it was a great interview, and I hope you guys can enjoy it. Joining us today on the podcast is Greg Tonagel from Indiana Wesleyan University. For those that needs no introduction usually across the country, but for those that don't need, I'll just run across his resume real quick. He's a three-time NEI Division II National Coach of the Year, three-time national championship head coach. He's coached 25 NEI All-Americans, including Kyle Mangus, who was a National Player of the Year twice. Kyle was also the Small College Basketball Player of the Year. They have won 12 Crossroads League regular season championships and 5 Crossroads League tournament championships. Coach right now currently has the highest winning percentage, most wins, and most NEI national tournament victories in program history. He's also had the most Crossroads League regular season championships and most Crossroads League tournament championships. So, heck of a resume, Coach. I know it's a long one, but over 18 years, it's been a fun program to follow and everything like that. But just wanted to welcome you to the show, and thanks for coming on.
Appreciate you having me, Junior. As I said, in the pre-recording, man, I followed you from afar. Have never seen the face behind the Twitter handle, so appreciate all you do for NAI basketball, and I'm excited to join you guys.
I appreciate that. And Coach, I know heading into this weekend, you got a big the Crossroads League WAC Classic coming up and challenge, and you want to talk about Indiana Tech, your opponent. I know that these guys, just up the road from you guys, but it's been over the last few years, the rivalry between you two has really come on strong here.
Yeah, we know Tech and they know us. I mean, we're 45 minutes up the road or down the road from them, and we play them twice every year. We typically open up the year, and then we play them post-Christmas. I knew Coach Albert when he was up at Cornerstone years ago, so we played them, and then he took over the job and started to build a heck of a program there. Just a lot of respect for them. They're tough, they're physical, they win. It's the type of program we want to open up with because we want to know right away, like, who are we? And in some ways, you want to show our guys, like, if you guys want to have some success, these are the types of teams you got to be able to compete with. So we'll find out a lot about our team this evening.
Well, and you said you want to find out, a lot about your team early, and you're certainly going to do that with your strength of schedule coming up. I know between the two WAC opponents you're going to play this weekend, and you're going to turn around and play Union next week, another top 15 program. You just talk about the challenges you guys have set early with your schedule here.
Yeah, I think, scheduling for us is a very intentional process. I mean, there's a lot of different philosophies you can take. One, can we get wins? Or two, can this be a part of this process of becoming a championship team? And I think, Now, as a young coach, trust me, it was about wins. It was like, I just want to schedule some wins. And my phone rang off the hook because everybody wanted to play us. And now it's like, we'll just take any game we can get anywhere, you name the time. We just don't have a choice. But I've also understood, you know, early losses and being pushed early really pays off on the back end. And basketball, right or wrong, you get evaluated how you do in March. And so being able to understand that and not being afraid to play people early on has helped us continue to grow as a team, expose some things early because the old rugged crossroads league is coming, and you need to be exposed early if you want to have a chance to compete in this league. And that's what our schedule's done. I mean, we talked about it. We got, we open up with Tech here, ranked team. We go Cornerstone, who's just as good in my opinion. They're going to be a national tournament team. Union comes to town. I don't know what they're ranked, but top 15. We go to Olivet Nazarene shortly thereafter. They do a tremendous job, especially at home, and so forth and so forth. So it's one game at a time. And ultimately, we're taking the long view, saying, who can we become in March, not who are we in November?
Well, and just to highlight March a little bit, and I know that's down the road, but I imagine that, that I always talk about the uniqueness of classics at this level and playing back-to-back days, and certainly the Crossroads League WAC challenge here is going to prepare you for that new format in the national tournament over the last couple of years, where you got to play 2 games back-to-back days to make it to Kansas City.
Absolutely. When it was in Branson back in the day, we used to talk about you had to play 3 games in a row to make it to the Final Four. Now, when you get to Kansas City, you playing back-to-back days, and those turnarounds are tough. For us, Friday night, we play the second game, and then we turn around and play the noon game. So it's a very quick turnaround. It is as much mental as it is anything else. So we've been prepping for that. We've been talking about that. But in order to grow from it, you got to go through it. And so I think we're exposing our guys to some stuff early on that's going to pay off later on.
You want to ask your first question? I think that was where we kind of started counting down during that.
The scheduling stuff?
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. So Coach, thinking about scheduling a little bit, maybe for those people at home that are listening, parents or just general fans that might not know kind of the genesis of an actual schedule, what's the timing of when you start working on that, or when you put Jeff to task on it, whoever does that for and with you. So what's the timeline of that, and then also, how are you forecasting where you think people are going to be relative to the competition that you're talking about you want to face? So go ahead and just share your thoughts on that a little bit.
Yeah, scheduling is it can be tricky. There's a lot of strategies that go into it because you're trying to build a resume, and at the end of the day, you're trying to build up a resume, because when it comes down to seeding at the end of the year, you're advocating for your own team, and the best way to do that is by wins. So one, you're trying to figure out who's going to be good, and you're doing this a year in advance, if not 2 to 3 years in advance. Many of our contracts are multi-year contracts, so we typically stick with some of the blue bloods of each conference. So we're playing Tech and Cornerstone every year. Those guys are typically always going to be in the top 4 in their leagues. We played Union the last couple of years. I mean, I don't know when the last time Union didn't win their league was.
Right.
And you could kind of go to each conference and figure that out. But at the same time, you want a balance of home and away. Road wins are good, but at the same time, being at home gives yourself an advantage, and also, builds, I think, momentum for your team. And then I say all that to say we have a hard time scheduling. So if somebody calls us and says we'll play, we're pretty much going to take the game if it's, within reason in terms of travel. So at the end of the day, this is done years out, and then you get there and you hope you've got a team that can compete. And the goal then is that we're creating a team that's competitive year in and year out. I mean, rarely do we say, well, in 2 years we think we'll be good, but in 3 we're not going to be that good. The expectations are we're going to be able to compete every single year. And to me, that's the hardest thing to do, is to sustain success. It's one thing to build it. It's another thing to sustain it.
One add-on to that is when you have the experience of when it was NAI 1 and 2, and then going through that merger. Did your scheduling philosophy shift at all when that merger happened? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried and been intentional about, let's get some of these other leagues that we had not typically played on our schedule, because the Midwest here has some really good leagues and some really good teams, and so We've tried to do that. I can't say we've been that successful so far, but it's been something we want to do. We've also, as we travel, so we'll typically go somewhere around Christmas each and every year. Could be Hawaii or Florida, Arizona. We're asking for more of those conferences and of the previous Division Ones that we haven't seen. Just saying, can we get some games? Because there is a little bit, I guess, in some senses, a different style, or you're seeing a little bit than Division Two. It's
Yeah.
starting to kind of mix now, but we want to be able to see that style of basketball, or certain conferences, I guess, play a certain style, expose yourself, so that when we get in the national tournament and a team plays a 1-3-1, because Crossers League, you're not going to see a 1-3-1. We're like, oh, we've seen that before, or
Yeah.
we've seen a press. Like Crossers League doesn't press, so we'd rather see it at some point so our guys can go against it than you have 24 hours and it's like, hey, by the way, we're going to see a press for the first time this year.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. It is interesting to see the different, depend on where you're at, conference by conference, just styles of play, and there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, right? So there's some really fun styles, and I think that was a fun piece of that merger, was watching, just the different styles sort of collide and see where it falls. So thanks for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Styles collide. Let me tell you. I mean, all three national championships or champions since the merger all play different styles too, which is even more
Oh
fun
yeah.
because you start off with the Shawnee State, who played their matchup zone, and it's just tough and long and athletic. And then you got the next year you had Loyola, who was long and athletic, but they were playing 10 different defenses and throwing everything at you, and they played so dang hard on defensively that you couldn't even get in offense. So it was very, very tough. And then you go last year with College of Idaho, who is very thorough in what they do. They play up tempo, but they're very good in the half court as well, and they can just beat you in so many different ways. And they play a matchup zone, but it's even more different matchup than what Shawnee ran. So it has been fun to watch the different styles play. So that's a great point to throw out there too. It's just the merger has been a lot of fun to see those different styles collide.
Say, Greg, why don't you talk about the education that you underwent, just away from basketball, just that part of your story, if you're okay sharing that with people. Just, I know, you're modeling what being a student is, right, to the student athletes that are on your team, and talk a little bit about that education that you underwent the last several years.
Yeah, so I think it started in 2016 after we won our second national championship. I kind of went through this period of like a little bit of apathy. I didn't really know what was going on. I was maybe questioning like what I wanted to do. I was worried I'd lost this drive, but at the same time, I had just experienced and our team experienced like this pretty significant move of God on our team. Like we just felt like we were dialed in and guys were hearing from the Lord and guys were tracking. So I walked across the street to our seminary and just said, hey, can I take a class? I'd like to learn some more. I feel the weight of a leader right now, and I'm not sure I'm equipped to carry this team to its next move. And I said, but I don't want another degree. I'd already been through it as a graduate assistant. I had a master's at Valparaiso University. Well, after an hour-long talk, the guy talked me into enrolling in our seminary, and it was like the best 4 years I ever had. I mean, and I say this not as cliche, but I really learned what it meant to coach people, not basketball. And I began to connect more deeper to my players. And as a result, my team started to play better. And I really began to, I think, get more out of my players. Well, that master's then turned into a doctorate. And my doctorate was in transformational leadership. And people would ask me all the time, like, are you leaving coaching? And I'd say, no, I'm just becoming a better coach. I think coaches do a great job. We invest into our professions through clinics and film and DVDs. And for me, this was just a pretty significant investment into my leadership, to be able just to go all in for a few years, to study, to learn, but then apply it to the program. That was the unique thing about my program, is everything I did, I got to apply to my context, which was coaching. And I feel like my players benefited from it. And I think long term as a leader, I really grew too throughout that process.
Coach, I know, turning gears a little bit here. I know you mentioned uh, Kyle Mangus and how great of a player he's been and stuff like that. And I thought it was really cool. In the last episode when we were talking to Coach Blaine over at College of Idaho, and how they use Kyle as a tool to kind of recruit the Montana Player of the Year and an All-American, a couple All-Americans now, a couple Montana Player of the Years over there but they've been using him as recruiting and talking about his, how his success at the NEI level and, putting, like you said, putting the we above me, maybe having some bigger offers, but coming down and sacrificing to not just win, but for stuff bigger than yourself. It's really cool to hear that experience and just knowing what Kyle's meant, not just to the NEI, but just how he's being used across the NEI now, and now obviously signing with the Pacers and things like that. You want to talk about maybe just him a little bit and not just what he meant to the program, but even nationally. It's kind of cool to see what a guy like that has turned into across the country as well.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I mean, Kyle is a generational young man. I mean, talent wise, he's obviously incredible, but it's all the other factors that you get with Kyle, and you just had to be around him to experience it. And I've never seen such a gap between how talented he was, but yet just the amount of humility that he had. Usually when you get around guys that are that talented and successful, humility's not quite there. But Kyle was so humble about it. Like he would just kick your butt and give you 40 without saying a word, but then shake your hand afterwards and tell you thanks for pushing him that day. He had that rare ability to do that. And my kids at home probably get sick of me talking about Kyle. Kyle could handle failure better than anybody. He had bad days, but you never knew it. And he missed shots, he missed game winners, and you didn't know it because he was going to take the next one. And so he really embodies everything you would want, in a son, in a basketball player. And now to see him get his opportunity with the Pacers, I told people, although he's on the G League team, he got that Exhibit 10 contract, which means the Pacers actually signed him. You're going to see more of Kyle Mangus because every situation he has been in, he has found a way to elevate his team, and as a result, he's become elevated. And so I'm not going to be surprised when I flip on, the actual Pacers NBA, and all of a sudden I see Kyle step onto the court in some role, in some capacity, because that's just what he does.
Yeah, it was fun watching him, throughout his career. I mean, we got going, I believe his sophomore year is kind of when we started up and seeing him not just grow because he was already good, but even then he still developed he continued developing every year, into a better and better player. And, got a few talks with him, and then, I know his dad, you talked about how much it means that you have family around and stuff. I know his dad's coming up to Fort Wayne tonight and going to be around, but just he DM with him every now and then. He sent me a DM saying he was going to be at the games, but just proves to the culture and everything you guys are doing there, and even with Kyle not around, you have parents showing up to games, and that's pretty cool.
It is special family, and they're always going to be a part of this family. And like I said, I think when Kyle steps on that NBA court for the first time, mom and dad are going to have smiles bigger than you can believe.
No doubt, it means a lot, and I know it's a fun program to follow just because of the sustained success, like we talked about already, and it's I'm sure that it'll continue to have sustained success. I know that's easier said than done, but just what you guys have built there is just to me is a staple of kind of what programs are trying to be and trying to accomplish. Obviously, everybody wants to win titles and not win games even, but sustained success off the floor as much as on the floor. And if you can do that, you've really built a championship program, and you guys have done that.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Up here, a new segment. Having Coach the Lubbers on, there's different perspectives he can bring, and I think that when we highlight some of the games coming up, he can give some deep dives into what to look for and what to expect in some of these games. Not only does he know coaches all across the NEI, but he knows games, and he's recently put together many scouting reports and many keys to success for his own team. So without further ado, I'm excited to Coach's Corner with Coach Lubbers.
Yeah, thanks, Junior. And this time of year, like we've been talking about, it's a little tricky to do too much of a deep dive because we just don't know enough about teams. So this particular week is probably going to be a little bit more of a 10,000-foot view. And as we move in through the season, I think we can zoom in a little closer as we learn more about about teams and players, but not because I work there, but because it's a great venue this upcoming weekend for a couple matchups that have a lot of intrigue. I'm going to point our attention to Lakeland, Florida this week, and the Furnace at Southeastern University for two great matchups. There's four really good teams that are going to be there, but the matchups that intrigue me the most happen on the second night of action on Friday night this week. First, we're going to see St. Thomas, who we've talked about a few times, going against Mobile. Two coaches that are in their first 5 years at these particular schools. Both programs are hunting their first conference titles under these coaches. They both have high aspirations. Both were selected number one preseason in their respective leagues. So Mobile comes from the Southern States, and St. Thomas is obviously in the Sun Conference. So high aspirations. Looking back to last year a little bit, St. Thomas made a great run, got to Municipal last year, got to the round of 16. The leading scorer, Matthews, is back. Really good backcourt. Watched them play that exhibition the other night. Their backcourt was really impressive. They shot the ball really well. And they have a phenomenal recruiting class coming in. On paper, they probably have one of the most talented classes in the country from a recruiting perspective. Mobile, on the other hand, is pretty heavy with returners. Right, they have a lot of their starters coming back. Very experienced group. I think it's year 5 for Coach Archie. If you don't know much about him, I encourage you to go read his bio online. He's an extremely accomplished coach. He's been a couple NCAA Final Fours with Butler, another Indiana reference there. So, but he's doing a great job with that program. They're also hunting down their first potential conference title. So, as I think about that game and what to watch, I think sort of set the tee already, but it's really it doesn't define the season, but it does set the tone, right? So I look at this as sort of a put a stake in the ground game for both these teams, who they are, who they're going to be, and really set a tone for where they're going to head. The title hopes, right, for each program and each coach is also there. Inside the game, the one thing that really jumps out to me on paper is both of these teams do a great job of getting to the free throw line. St. Thomas was number 1 in the country last year. Mobile was number 11 in the country last year in terms of free throw attempts per game. And so I think whichever team can find their way into the bonus first, right, and get to the free throw line early in the game, if they can get to the line 20 plus times, I think they're going to put themselves in a really good position to win that game. So it's both offensively attacking the rim, getting to the foul line, but then it's also defensively defending without fouling. So I think that's going to be a really important key to this game. And a possession game, right? Limiting your turnovers and disrupting the other side enough to create turnovers will also be a key ingredient, I think, in success. So if I'm in the locker room, I'm thinking about, can I win the turnover battle? And can I win the battle at the free throw line to come out with a win? Whether I'm Mobile or St. Thomas, I think both those things ring true for that particular game. So excited to watch that one. And then right on the heels of that, we're going into a rematch from last year's round of 32, Southeastern, who's getting votes this year, preseason, and Faulkner, who's getting votes preseason this year. I think the biggest thing I see when I look at this game on paper is both teams are sitting there wondering, who are we this year? There's a lot of turnover on both those rosters. Both teams have a championship pedigree. They're used to winning inside their conference. They're used to being in the national tournament the last several years. Both were top 25 last year. And there's key personnel losses, though, for sure. Faulkner, I believe, was losing 6 of their top 7 from last year. Almost, I think on their website I saw about 67, 68 points a game gone, including one of those players, Murphy, that went over to Southeastern. So that's a story inside the story. And Southeastern, obviously losing Riley Minix to Division I, Morehead State. Again, just like we were talking about a few minutes ago, some of our players go on to different things, and Riley's playing at Morehead State. He'll be playing at Indiana and Penn State and Purdue and all those places this year. I think they tip off with Alabama. They lost a couple of glue guys as well, and Riley Maddox and Jalen Mull. So I think really, who are we is the question I think about the most as I look at this game. So what to watch inside this game? I think it's related to that. Big thing is who can find their identity faster. Right? I know Southeastern's had some scrimmages and closed door things. Faulkner had a game this past weekend that they pulled out, but there's a lot of new faces on both sides, a lot of new roles, right? So who can find their identity faster? The transition game, I think this is going to be a slower paced game, if I was guessing. A little bit of a rock fight, if you will. Low scoring, I think this could be in the 60s. Both teams are pretty content to play in the half court. So I think if one or the other can find some ways to get some easy buckets in transition, that could be a key. Controlling the three-point line. These teams are both excellent shooting teams. Both of them hovered around 300 makes from three last year, which is a lot for viewers out there. It's about 10 a game. So I think one of the biggest keys to winning this game is who can control the three-point line. I think if one or the other of these teams gets 10 plus makes from three, I think they're going to win the game. So those are my thoughts in the coach's corner here, looking at Lakeland, Florida this upcoming week, and exciting to see a couple great matchups down there and some great coaches doing work.
Yeah, and this is a series that I'm excited about moving forward. I know you have some different visions with this one. I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes because I think that's a big-time segment. Two big-time games you highlighted there, and certainly games that everybody should have circled because I think that it's going to be a fun little classic down there as well.
Yeah.
There's some other big-time games this week, and I'm not going to reference all of them. We'll catch up during the week on some of the stuff we put out. For me, and I'm going to try not to tear up here, but one of the hardest articles I ever had to write, I wrote this year for the magazine. It was an article about Jace Lance over at Missouri. And, Jace on February 3rd, 2023 this year, the past season, they were getting ready for their game the next day and having, what most coaches would call shoot around practice and just get the legs loose and shooting. And Jake, one of the leaders on the team, got quiet, went off to the side, and collapsed. And for all the better purposes, was not with us for a little bit. And luckily, his dad and the trainer and everybody jumped into action, and they excuse me, but they brought him back to life. And he's a kid that's had quite a journey since then, not knowing exactly what was going to happen. He's been told by doctors numerous things. But to make a long story short, you can read the full story in our preseason magazine if you want to do that. It's not a shameless plug, but not even about the plug. This is about Jace, and I'm just so excited on November 4th, which is upcoming Saturday. Him and his dad's his head coach at Missouri Valley, and Chad does a good job too. He's been around for a while. And, I can't imagine what it was like for him to experience all that, but they have a tradition where they give each other a big hug right before tip-off of every game. And when they tip off at 7 p.m. Central Time on Saturday, I imagine the hug's going to be a little bit different this week. I'm just thrilled that he got cleared to play. That doesn't always happen when you go into cardiac arrest. But the doctors and everybody worked hard to get him back. He's worked hard in his rehab to get back. And, an all-conference player, is one thing to return, but just the fact that, everything he's been through, it's one of the things I'm looking for most this weekend. I will be tuned into that game. I'll probably I protect myself here a little bit. I got through some maybe a little limited tears, but if I see that on camera, the hug, I'm sure I will lose it. But congratulations to Jace. I know from talking to his mom and everybody during this writing that article, it really was one of the toughest things I've ever had to write.
Yeah.
Just having to, I know it was tough for them. They haven't relived the moment, and I appreciate them giving us the story and helping us with it. But wishing Jace the best of luck this year. And like I said, if anybody wants to tune into that game, it's going to be November 4th at 7 p.m. Central Time. They will be hosting Columbia. So just wanted to kind of touch base on that one. I feel like that's bigger than basketball, and I wanted to kind of highlight that one over some games this week.
Yeah, thanks for putting a spotlight on that, Junior. That's the stuff that matters, right? The rest of this is fun to talk about, and But at the end of the day, the other stuff we're talking about, it doesn't really matter. The stuff that you're highlighting with Jace, that's the good stuff, and that's the stuff that really matters. And so excited. I don't know that coach and I don't know that family at all, but that story is really powerful. And I know people out there, and I'm sure that family appreciates you putting a spotlight on that. And just wish that kid. I hope the kid goes out there and has 40. And,
Yeah.
and the team gets a win. But most of all, you just hope that it's a great experience for him and everything else. And life is fragile, and this is really fun. With these kids and coaches and players and sports is a lot of fun. But the results, honestly, at the end of the day, don't matter at all. There's way more to it than that. And so really appreciate you pointing that out. And but most of all, just excited for that kid and that family that they get a chance to keep competing, keep playing, and keep having fun.
No doubt. So, other than that, I do want to close out the show with the highlights of some stuff to come. One of the cool parts for us this year, we're actually partnering with First Down Designs. We're going to have a Coach of the Week and Player of the Week announcements coming up. They should be out sometime, as this is going to be published Monday morning, so it should be any time between the morning and afternoon here. So be in tune to those. Other than that, looking forward to the week ahead. I know, like I said, there's going to be some big-time games, so we'll have our games of the day previewed throughout the week. And as always, you can come back to the website and look up everything else, too. I'm sure we'll have some other stories out this week as well. But other than that, it's Coach Lubbers and Jr. signing off.